Majidayo.
Hey yo, welcome back to Majidayo, the podcast where we talk about Majiska Gakuen, the show produced by AKB48. I am your host, Raiden, and this is my co-host, Elliot.
Hello.
And we are talking about episode 10 today.
Oh my god. We're finally here.
The title is, I'm gonna say the title because I remembered this time. For Minami, for Yuko-san, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, welcome back. Dear listeners, I hope you guys are all safe out there.
Make
healthy.
sure you're washing your hands.
Yeah, please wash your hands. Yeah, so let's just jump right into any idol news.
Shino
46 or
Mariko,
48.
who plays Sato, had her baby about 4 days ago. As of
Yeah,
the time
babies.
of us recording this. She's had a little girl, and I think out of the ones that have had children within the past year or so that are like notable, she's the only one that's had a girl. I think everyone else has had boys.
I think so too, but don't quote me on
Yeah.
that.
Out of the fourth one I've mentioned. Out of the four I've mentioned.
Well, there's actually been a lot of babies being born. But
many.
Mariko did say her and the baby were healthy, they're fine. Probably at home now from the date of this recording. But yeah, she's had her baby. Congrats to her.
I hope.
Anything else you have?
I don't remember exactly the last day we recorded this, but just edit this out if I'm wrong, and we mentioned it last time. But Yokoyama Yui started her YouTube channel.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. I don't think we talked about it last time.
I think it was like in
we said that she was
last time. Like
yeah, it was. So, but now it's officially out,
and she posts
and you can go
so
to her
often.
YouTube channel.
And surprisingly, from the videos I've seen, her cat is in none of them, and I'm like, who is this? Who are you?
Well, yeah, I'm actually not surprised. She hasn't actually been doing a lot of like Bisou photos or like videos recently. I think she's scaled back a lot on that. And I haven't actually, bad Yui fan here, but I haven't actually watched any of them yet.
I've watched a couple, but that's a very limited watch because they didn't have subtitles at the point. I don't know if they do. I haven't gone back and looked.
Yeah, I'm praying some kind soul subtitle them. That's partially why I've kind of refrained from doing it, because occasionally you'll get someone who's like takes pity on the rest of us. And it's like, yeah, I'll sub this.
God,
but
please.
I don't know. We'll see. If not, I'll go and give it a watch. But yeah, go check out her YouTube channel. I think it's called Yui Han Life.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Anything else?
Those are the only two I have. Oh, actually, Akimoto Sayaka, who plays Chokoku, please watch all of her videos about staying at home. They're so fucking funny. Oh my god.
Yeah, on her Twitter
yes.
and her Instagram.
Oh my god.
She's been promoting
promoting
someone, people to stay at home.
Yeah, if you need someone to motivate you to stay home, please go watch those videos. They're so good.
Yeah, no, they're very funny, very entertaining to watch. I think at one point she dressed up as like a Hooters waitress.
She did for 2 videos actually.
Yeah, 2 videos. And it was just really entertaining to watch. So if you need something to cheer you up when you're stuck at home, definitely her videos are recommended. And I think with that, because I can't think of any other news that's just sort of been in my radar that relates to 46 or 48. Well, to be fair, I actually haven't like kept up with any 46 news, which is bad, but I just haven't. Let's just jump into the episode.
All right.
So sorry to 46 fans, I don't have anything for you.
Maybe next time.
I need to follow more 46 people because I'm often very late to the news because I don't hear anything. So episode 10, Elle. I'm sure you were crying as you were watching this.
I've literally rewatched this episode like right before we started recording just to be like, okay, maybe I'll remember what happens. And I still cried.
Yeah, so episode 10 for Minami for Yuko-san. We start with like flashbacks to the previous episode. Yuko collapsing, Maeda crying into her cucumbers, Nezumi having a psychopathic laugh, I guess. I don't know. She's out
on
there
a
enjoying
trip.
life,
Yeah.
ruining people's lives. Yeah. Sato determined to take Maeda down, and so we come back after the theme song, and we are here in the club room with the defeated queens, minus Gekikara. I guess she went back to reform school or something.
No,
I
I
don't know.
don't think so. I just think Geki's not on campus because Geki's, spoiler alert, Geki's in the next episode, very briefly. So I don't.
Oh really?
Think,
I don't remember that.
Yeah. I don't think Geki went back to reform school. I think Geki was just like, I don't want to be on campus right now. Bye.
Or the real thing was they couldn't get Matsui Rena to be there.
That's true. I'm speaking like in the universe of Maji.
Yeah, in the universe, it's more
probably
you're right.
Real life,
Rena
was out like doing SKE stuff,
and we get the freshmen who are saying we need to do something. That they're telling their seniors, "Hey, what are we gonna do now that you guys got your asses handed to you?" And obviously, like Shibuya knows what they're talking about, but is pissed and is like, "What are you talking about?" Torigoya's the one to say, like, obviously we got the shit kicked out of us, so what's our response here? And the freshmen are like, because they're out of the loop about like everything. They're like, "Where's Yuko senpai? Like, where?
Yeah,
when is she coming back?
Is she coming back anytime soon?" And then Torigoyo is just like, "You think we could face her after all of us got beat?" I find it very funny that she's just like, no, none of us could face her after that. Although I really don't think, especially in Torigoyo's case, that Yuka would be upset. Frustrated, maybe. But, like, Torigoyo in particular, I don't think she would be mad at her, because Yuko knows that it's not Torigoyo's fault. But they don't know that Sato's been telling her everything, so...
Yeah, and then obviously Shibuya, being who she is like pissed off about that response.
Oh yeah,
she's like, "You're annoying."
Like, "Shut up, you're annoying." And I'm like, "Let the girl talk, please." She has 5 lines. Let her talk.
Black is the one to be like, "Well, I guess we can't really do anything until Sato says so." And the freshmen are like, "Okay, where is Sato?" And Torigoya gives this like super like vague response, and she's like, "Oh, she's there," and they're like, "There where?"
I'm like, all of the queens know, but the freshmen are like, "What?"
And I feel bad for these freshmen. And the thing about this is they're the freshmen that are supposed to like take over after them, and they like know absolutely nothing. Like, I'm like, how do you expect these poor freshmen to be able to take over when you tell them and leave them out of everything?
Exactly. Like, y'all are gonna leave and they're just gonna be stuck there not knowing shit, and it'll be chaos. Well, more chaos, like than Majidayo
more chaos, especially if they're not as strong. I mean, there'll definitely be like a fight for power.
Oh yeah,
and that's probably what they expect, but I don't know. So that the poor freshmen are clueless, and they're just they're just there, I guess. I just think the show forgot about them and doesn't know what to do with them.
Yeah, I definitely
and it's such
think
a weakness
so
because I'm like, they had a lot of potential to really flesh out the freshmen, and they just don't. And it's like, okay, like, I forgot these people exist. Just here, let's just have them say some lines.
Yeah, I feel like they're really only used as like a way for us to kind of learn a little bit more about Rapapa, but like the bare minimum.
Yeah,
like through them is how we learned like about Black's death sentences, and then we learned about Gekikara through them essentially. So they are used, but not in the way they should be.
No, it's a very weak usage of their characters, and I'm just sad about their lost potential because I know it doesn't really get better in season 2.
Oh yeah. Ugh.
No.
Don't talk to me about
but that
that
being
in
said,
season two.
yeah. That being said, we cut to Sato, and the queens are saying, oh, so she's finally like getting ready to take on Maeda on her own. And she's at the temple where she met Yuko with her kedama in hand and like meditating, I guess.
Just standing there. So sure, let's go with meditating.
I say meditating. I mean, she just, she doesn't say anything but like Maeda, and then like the scene cuts away to Maeda, and she's
very vigorously washing her hands.
She's doing her part for the coronavirus.
Oh my god, stop.
You know, like washing her hands, making sure they're clean. No,
she's doing too much.
Sorry,
she then washes them
that was
again.
very bad taste. She is washing her hands very vigorously. I think she's actually, I don't know if it's in this scene.
No,
it's
in the
next
not.
scene.
Yeah, it's the next one.
So I'll talk about it later. But we cut away to poor Woda with still like a bandage on her nose and saying that she can't taste anything because they're all eating together. And she's just like, I just can't taste anything. And Bunch's like, you haven't gotten any better? And Woda's like, I don't heal fast. I'm not like the rest of these weirdos in this school who can come like back the next day without a single scar. It's Akicha who's actually next to her, and she's actually like trying to give Unagi a piece of meat, and Unagi just eats it. And Akicha's like, oh, what about your like trauma? And Unagi goes into this explanation about how she saw some natives eat some bugs and it looked really, really good. And I like how Mukuchi's just like, yeah, I understand.
Yeah, she just nods along like, yeah, I get it.
And Akicha's like, you're so extreme with this shit. Like, you're... I don't know, I just think this whole scene with them was just really great. Because Wodo's just like, how come your problems are so easy? You know, like, you're so lucky.
And then she goes on and, like, picks up a piece of... I'm pretty sure it's probably, like, beef stomach. And then she's like, when you look at it closely, the stomach looks like a dusting cloth. And the rest of them just immediately throw their food back onto their plates. And, God, poor Wota's hits her nose.
Well, everyone but Mukuchi. Mukuchi just eats it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
Mukuchi's probably eaten bugs in her life. So she's like, dusting cloth, no big deal.
Yeah. Woda ends up like smacking her nose by accident, and it's just like, oh shit, that hurt. And Akicha's like, yeah, blame Maeda, this is all her fault. And Unagi's like, yeah, we keep getting beaten, you know, because we're supposedly her friends, but she says we're not friends. And the scene like cuts away to Dharma, who is brooding, and it's like, I'm a lousy underling, so I haven't done anything. I haven't been able to help her at all. And I think that just is like a callback to Dharma, you know, what we talked about before, with that she needs kind of a validation of that she's doing a good job. And these past episodes, two episodes, she's felt like she's failed and needs to find a way to make up for it. And so she's up in the roof thinking to herself, not, you know, because usually when we come into episodes, we see her like in Team Hormone space, and this time no, she was off on her own doing some contemplating, which I think kind of speaks to how serious it got with the situation with her and Maeda, and Maeda's sort of behavior these past two episodes. So we cut to Irena trying to put tacks in Maeda's shoes, and
I find it funny that she tries first putting in like one at a time when it's a whole box of tacks, and then she goes, fuck it, and then starts pouring it in. So I'm like, just do that in the first place, please.
I mean, like, it's funny because obviously Nezumi pops up behind her and scares her, and she drops the shoes and the tacks. And she's like, oh, like, you're the one doing all these childish acts against Maeda. And it is very childish, and I think it just speaks to how young Irena is in this series, in this season. Well, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about her as we go into the episode, because we get more about her, or about her vendetta against Maeda. And so I just want to make a note that her behavior there's a logic behind her behavior. Is it justified?
No.
Debatable, but you know.
I
would
mean,
say it's debatable,
yes,
but
yes and no. We'll get to it.
Yes and no.
We'll get to it, put down a couple of like points in my notes about it, so we'll get there.
But Nazumi's like, oh, I know you're the one doing all this stuff. She even takes out the poster about Maeda being a murderer. It's like, you're the one that did this. And obviously Irena doesn't answer, but you know, silence speaks volumes. And she's essentially threatening her with this blackmail. It's like, you have to do what I say and know that it's like an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of deal that's going on here. And the camera slowly like pans behind, and Mikuchi's actually been listening to this whole conversation and sort of sneaks away from where they're at, which is by like, I guess, where they put their shoes before
they have like little like
go
lockers
into the building
at the entrance of the school where they put their outside shoes in.
And so
now we're back to Maeda
again,
washing her hands again.
Yeah.
And every time that she's done washing them, she lifts them up to her, like, to look at them, and then immediately goes back to washing them. And this time we actually see why. She looks at them, and then it actually gives us a flashback to the last episode from after she beat the ever-loving shit out of Torigoya, and her hands were covered in blood. She sees that again, and then immediately goes back to washing her hands, because she can't get this idea of what she's done like off of her. Like, she can't forget about it. It's kind of I went back and forth, like, does she still think that maybe she's got the physical blood on her hands, not just a metaphorical thing? I couldn't come up with a decision one way or another about that. I
mean, it's interesting if it was kind of like one of those lasting effects of Torigoya's like mind games.
Ooh, that would be cool. I didn't think about that.
You know, like it's something that sort of scarred her, and I could see it being that, given that Yuko herself was, you know, saying that Torigoya's power was pretty frightening. And so as Maeda is again washing her hands, like a hand shoots out to turn the faucet off. And it's Dharma who's looking at Maeda with like a lot of concern and just hugs her. You know, she doesn't say anything at first. She just hugs her, and Maeda tries to fight against it, but Dharma like holds on tight and is like, "Hey, Atsuna, you're not alone." Like, and trying to reassure Maeda, you know, like, "Hey, this, like, you have people you can depend on. You know, like, there are people who do care about you that you can rely on." And it's just like, I think Dharma's way of just trying to do something because she doesn't know what to do. Like, she can't think of anything else.
And then Maeda actually does push her away, but it's not like a shove. It's a very gentle kind of like, okay, now get off of me kind of thing. And then she starts to walk away, but she actually stops and looks at Dharma, who, mind you, is like giving her the saddest puppy eyes that she could give. But it doesn't stop Maeda completely. She, after looking at Dharma, she actually walks away.
Yeah, she does. There's this like dramatic wind. Like,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Maeda doesn't like totally. I think this is Maeda's way of saying I'm not totally open to this, but I'm not rejecting it either. I think this is a place of Maeda not knowing how to feel because she's this whole like torrent of emotions right now that she can't really place, and so she doesn't have a response to what Dharma is saying. And so the episode just cuts to Sato, who's still at the temple. She takes out her old ass flip phone.
God.
And that matches her jacket, I think. It's like white as
it's
well.
also white. It's very funny. She's got a favorite color, and it just happened to be white.
We assume it's a call from the hospital because it's about Yuko, and we get a flashback of Yuko having collapsed in the hospital, and the scene fades away to Sato now in the hospital, and she's holding Yuko's hand very tenderly. She's back in the room, and Yuko is not conscious. as she's there holding her hand, which I'm sure at this point you can hear Elle's tears
Stop it.
in the distance.
Don't call me out like this. Stop.
You know I'm right, though.
I haven't started crying yet. There's a scene later. We'll get to it.
So we cut to commercial break, and Team Hormone is like crowding around Maeda's desk, and they're like asking all these questions. They're like, "Who are you? Get out of here!" You know, crowding around something and like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it's Arena, and she's come to Maeda's classroom, and she has this paper in her hand, and she takes it out and unfolds it. Super dramatic kind of reading. She's like, "This is a challenge for Maeda Atsuko. I challenge you to battle at 5 o'clock today." And everyone is looking at like this, you know, everyone considers, you know, young, you know, she's a freshman. She's baby faced. And they're like, what the hell is going on? But for Rena, this is very serious, and she's like, this is to settle, you know, the issue of my sister. And she even says her whole name, Ono Arena, sorry. And I think for Maeda, it like finally clicks who this really is, unless she mentioned it before.
No, she hasn't. No, she hasn't.
Because
Because every time she has come up to Maeda, she specifically said, "You've killed Minami," or that kind of thing, or she was there.
She hasn't
lurking,
ever said
but
older
not
sister.
saying anything.
Okay.
And I find it kind of interesting that like Maeda's like, "Wait, older sister," and a part of me wonders if maybe she even knew about Arena.
I have a feeling that she didn't know about Arena.
Yeah, because she's like Minami's younger sister. She's very confused,
Yeah.
but like you said, it does like click in her head, like, oh, this is why you've been like coming at me and why you know about Minami.
Yeah, I think so too. I think she had like no idea. But Arena throws the piece of paper down and runs out the classroom, and Dharma tries to chase after. Maeda picks up the paper and is attempting to go leave, because I'm assuming this is like after school, because like nobody else is in that classroom.
Hold on, before we keep going, I've paused it.
Yeah.
There's a noose in the background.
There's a noose?
Yeah.
What?
When it's the shot of Maeda with the challenge paper like in her hands, and it shows Team Hormone behind her, and they're like, "Wait, you're actually going?" If you look to the right of them, there's rope hanging.
Oh my god,
and
I
it's
do
definitely
see it.
that's definitely a noose, and I've never noticed that before.
What the hell?
Why? I mean, they're very rowdy Yankees. That kind of thing shouldn't be a surprise, because it would be like, haha, look, it's funny to them.
I just think someone in the props department was having
having a day.
dark humor kind of day.
Yeah. Oh my god. Anyways.
Interesting. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I just noticed it.
So Team Hormone is saying, "Oh, you're going?" Yeah.
And Mukuchi actually is the first one to run up to Maeda, and just standing there, she's like looks like she's trying to speak, and everyone's like, "Wait, Mukuchi? What are you doing?" And then
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about Mukuchi for a bit,
Okay.
if you let me.
yeah, go ahead.
So Mukuchi, as we know, is a very silent type of character. She's more expressive through her acts rather than her words. And it's not that she can't speak, it's that she, for the most part, chooses not to. But I think that when she does speak, you know, those in her friends and those around her will listen, because, you know, this is someone who says very few words, and when she actually wants to say something, it's like most people will listen to what she has to say. And I just think that she's just a interesting kind of character, especially because she's mostly in the background a lot of the time, and a lot of her actions, they're kind of easy to miss if you're not sort of paying attention to, you know, what she's doing. But I just find it really interesting that she's the first to say, "Hey, I'm going to go with you," because that's what she says. She's like, "I will go too." I don't know, like I just find it interesting that she's the one to put her faith in Maeda first.
And
And
I
she
do
surprises everybody. Like,
oh yeah, because they probably have. Well, Maida's never heard her talk at all.
no.
So it even shocked Maeda a little bit. But I wanted to mention a couple of things specifically. Is that, well, one, because Mukachi like doesn't talk very often, I think it is a really nice. It adds a nice dynamic amongst the members of Team Horomon, because the other ones can never shut up.
Yeah.
So it makes it much more, I don't know, I just feel like it makes the group as a whole a little bit more interesting too. But also I think the reason why Mukachi, like a part of the reason why she's the first one to go up to Maeda and be like, I'm going with you, is because she's probably the one that heard the whole plan between Arena and Nezumi. Like, we saw her listening in, so she's the one that knows what's going to happen. I wanted to mention it like true, towards the end of the scene, because the scene's very dramatic. And
yeah,
we don't see them learning about what's going to happen, but I don't. So if you just watch it, you think that they're being this dramatic over a challenge of a freshman, which would be hilarious.
Well, no, they say this is a trap. Like, they know it's a trap.
They did? Oh, I missed it.
They know, like, yeah, no, they say this. They're like, you think that little girl's gonna be there by herself? Like, they're like, you're gonna be outnumbered if you go by yourself. So that's why. I mean, Woda's the one, I think, to point it out.
Mm-hmm.
And is the second person after Mukachi to say, I will also go with you, Maeda. And that's the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about for this particular scene, because obviously, like, literally, like, a few minutes before,
mm-hmm.
they were saying, like, Maeda doesn't consider us a friend, and vice versa. You know, like, we just get hurt all the time being around her,
mm-hmm.
even though we have no connection. And yet, like, a couple minutes, later, it's like, oh, we'll fight with you. And I don't know, like, part of me, I like their friendship, right? Quotes, friendship. But, like, I don't know if I could feel like this is believable for them to do, because they were just complaining about her, like,
well, Woda does mention,
few minutes ago.
Woda does mention, like, because even Unagi's like, why are we doing this for her when, like you said, we're only getting hurt by being around her? But Wota actually says, like, hey, no, we're just using that excuse of we're not her friends. And, like, we don't want to be getting hurt as, like, a cover-up. Like, you're hiding your feelings just because of, we are getting hurt and that kind of thing. You don't want to be associated with her.
You're right.
But Wota does actually, like, point it out.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. I guess I just had, like, completely...
That's okay. I totally forgot Wota said it was a setup, so...
But yeah, so you're right. They do say we're just using it as a cover-up because we do sort of care for this person,
mm-hmm.
We do care for this transfer student that sort of ruined our lives. But Maeda, she does thank them. She says, thank
mm-hmm.
you for, in her own way, right? Thank them for wanting to stick with her. But she says, I'll handle it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And Woda's like, okay, well, we'll let you do what you want to do. I think that's kind of, like, interesting how their dynamic with Maeda's a little different, because with Dharma, I could see Dharma trying to be like, no, like, push it, and say, no, like, don't go by yourself,
mm-hmm.
and push it. Whereas the moment that Maeda's like, no, I'll do it on my own, they easily back off and are like, okay, well, we'll trust your judgment in that. And I think that's a little bit, it's interesting to see that kind of different dynamic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of like their friendships are, in my opinion, like are like different levels of friendship. Like Daruma's much closer to Maeda than all of Team Horomon is to Maeda. So to me, mm-hmm. I don't know why I was calling it this, but like Team Horomon to Maeda have like a Yankee friendship where it's like we're comrades, but maybe not necessarily like actual friends.
That's true. Yeah.
But with
which I'll actually debate a little bit mm-hmm. in the second season, because I think over time that may have changed.
Oh yeah, I think they actually even like mention it in, at least for Mukachi, I know they mention it in season 2. Anyways.
So Maeda exits the classroom, and we come back to Sato in the hospital with Yuko. As Sato is, clutching Yuko's hand, Yuko says Sato's name, and she has regained consciousness.
She's so weak. Like her even in her voice, you could tell that she's very weak.
I'll let you take point on this scene because I know I know God, you're ready to talk about
it. After like Yuko calls out to Sato kind of has like this surprised but also very concerned look that she gives Yuko. And I think she leans even like a little bit closer to Yuko, and Yuko asks her, she's like, hey, are you serious? And Sato actually hesitates to answer Yuko's question. And like I said, Yuko doesn't like that. And I know I said she's very weak, but her weak, I feel like could still maybe be considered strong for a normal human being, because these kids aren't normal. But she grabs Sato by like the collar of her sweater and pulls her very, very, very close. Their faces are very close together. And Yuko tells Sato in a very like serious tone, but also very softly, and it hurts me. She tells her, stop being so hesitant. I don't like it when you're so weak-minded. Actually, I think she says, I hate it, not don't like it, but...
Yeah, she says she hates it, yeah. And can I just say, like, I feel like even then, Sato is hesitating.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she's so, like, literally, like, millimeters away from Yuko's face. There's some action here that she could take, romantically, right?
God, every time I see it, I'm like, now kiss. Just do it.
Well, yeah, but I think part of it, too, is, like, Sato can't, right? She's like, I can't. And you're in this state, the school is a mess, Rapapa's a mess. Like, I have all these things, and I think that she just can't help but hesitate in everything that she does. Because everything that she's done, for this school as, the vice boss of Rapapa, like, has always been with Yuko by her side.
And the things she has done, like, by herself have, failed. They fucked up and, made things worse, not necessarily made them better.
And then Yuko just tells her to go, and essentially giving her, like, a push. And saying, like, hey, you're protecting, our school, right? The scene just kind of ends with that, as they're kind of stuck in this moment.
That's it. That's all the crime going to do. We're just going to move on.
Okay. And we cut to Maeda having the challenge sheet in her hand. She's walking down into this warehouse somewhere. And she instantly is surrounded by Yobakune students, including the two that we saw beforehand in some episodes ago. The ones that had, like, the girl that stole Daruma's bike and then sold it to the other girl, so they're there too. But, completely surrounded. The Yobakune boss comes out. I love her to bits. She is so dramatic, flashy, and everything that she does.
It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And Nezumi is also there, kind of away out of sight. And, Maeda's asking for Arena. They're like, we don't know who you're talking about. And they're, mocking her, saying, oh, she's stupid, she came alone. And speaking of Arena, we cut back to Arena, who is sitting on the roof. And Daruma has finally caught up to her and is saying, like, accusing her, like, hey, you're the one that's been doing all this shit to Maeda to make her feel bad. Like, why? Like, what is the reasoning behind all this shit, And here's where I, really want to talk about Arena.
Okay.
Because Arena comes out and says, she killed my sister. Like, everything that I've done is because it's, I think, to Arena some form of revenge, right? And Rena's like, what, 14, 15?
Yeah, like 15. I think
like,
probably
she's
15.
Very young.
Because I think
probably 15,
freshman
right?
in Japan's like 15, 16. So I think so.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, it's different. But she's 15 years old. She lost someone very close to her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she hasn't, and in her eyes, there was no justice, you know, for her sister's death,
Mm-hmm.
for Minami's death. And so she's like, I have to do something because I don't know any other way to talk about my grief,
Mm-hmm.
you know, other than to blame it on the person that caused it. It's funny because, like, I know I'm sort of jumping ahead here because I know we do some cuts between the fight with Maeda and the conversation that Dharma's having with Irena.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm jumping a little ahead here and then we'll come back to that whole fight because we do cut a lot in between these two scenes.
Yeah, there's a lot. It goes back and forth.
There's a lot of cuts.
Just like every other episode of this show.
Yeah, it actually goes back and forth not only between this fight, but also between things that are happening in the past as well,
God, yeah.
through Maeda's memory. So I'm gonna actually break this down a little bit. So let's do
idea.
Irena's.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's do Irena's conversation first between her and Dharma. And then we'll do the fight and the past because those things are kind of together.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good.
So Irena's like, you know, my sister didn't deserve what happened to her. And Dharma's like, you know, like my sister wanted to be a nurse. Sorry, not Dharma. Irena is like, my sister wanted to be a nurse. She stopped fighting. She stopped being a Yankee. And then in the end, she died. And Dharma's like, well, Atsune is also trying to do that. You know, like, she's also trying to achieve that goal. And Irena's kind of just like, that shit don't matter when my sister's dead, right? Like, all of this shit doesn't matter. If this is some way of Maeda trying to make up for it, it's a, you know, poor way of doing it, right? Because my sister's still dead. Like, yes, her behavior isn't excusable because Dharma's like, hey, Maeda's in grief, in pain too. Like, you are not the only one who is suffering. Plus, Maeda probably didn't know Irena existed, given her reaction to all of this from the beginning. However, you know, she is a kid, right? She doesn't have a good outlet for her grief, doesn't know what to do with it. And so I can't necessarily blame her for her attitude, for the way that she's reacted, because she's young. You know, like,
it's a very, like, I'm not gonna say childish, but it kind of is. Like, usually, I could talk about this. Okay, I will talk about this. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about depression in children, which also kind of extends to teenagers because I don't think it really changes until your brain changes when you become an adult. But one sign of seeing, like, I guess also technically grief processing in children is that they become incredibly irritable and very aggressive. They, you know, they lash out at people. Where with, like, adults, we tend, depression usually doesn't show up in that same way. It could be, I mean, yes, irritability is a thing, but that's usually just because of the constant fatigue that coexists usually with depression. So I can really appreciate that that's what they're doing with Irena. She is a child, so her lashing out at, you know, like you said, the person who, in her eyes, is to blame for this. I don't know. It's good, and I like the fact that they are showing, you know, different ways to process trauma. Maeda, on the other hand, has shut everyone off. You know, she's closed herself off from everyone, and even the people like Dharma who do care about her. And she's, like, completely emotionally stunted as well too because of it. And then we have Irena,
it's a really
hand, you know.
Yeah, no, I love that there's this contrast, you know, between both of the way that they've processed the grief of the, you know, of a person that they've loved. And it's yeah, I think it's actually really great that the show kind of took this direction. I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, Rena's annoying. Like, she should see that, you know, Maeda's suffering too. And obviously, like, Dharma's kind of meant to do that for her.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, like, wake up, right? Like, this is, you know, everyone hurt from this incident. No one benefited from this, right? You're not the only one suffering. And I think Dharma actually serves that purpose for Maeda too, you know, like, in a different way. but it's, you know, to blame Arena, to say she's annoying and stupid for doing this, I'm like, she's a kid, you know, like you can't really, she has kind of a valid excuse for the way that she acts. It's not right, it's not, you know, it's something that she needs to be able to work towards.
It's very not healthy.
Work through. It's not healthy, no. But she is a child, you know, like she is still someone who lost her older sister. Like that's the way that she's processing it is not healthy, but it is, you know, as a kid, what's happening to her and what she's lashing out towards. And it's just, that's just what it is, right? Like, so as, you know, she's a character who I can't necessarily blame for the way that she acts, right? I understand it, and it's not justifiable, but I do. And I know some people were like, oh, she's annoying and da-da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, but like, look it through, you know, a child's perspective. And it was just interesting how the show sort of mirrored their grief. And I will say this show is this episode specifically has a lot of mirroring.
Oh yeah, parallels galore in this episode. It's like we barely had any throughout the rest of the season, but they're all in this one episode. There's so much. Yeah,
it's kind of, it's interesting. But yeah, so that's the whole conversation between Dharma and Arena, and Arena's like, it doesn't even matter, you know, what I did, because she's gonna go through the same thing that my sister went right now. And Dharma's just like, oh shit, you idiot, and then like runs out of the roof, presumably to go find where Maeda is. And Maeda is currently surrounded by Yabakune students, and this is where we'll talk about sort of the fight between Maeda and this circle of people who she doesn't even like know, has no like. It's so funny because Yabakune has just been like in the background this whole time. And like she hasn't had like, she has had very minimal interaction with like their students.
The only time I could think of that she's actually interacted with a Yabakune student was in episode 3 with Gakuran, when they kept like interrupting
that was like
her.
Weeks ago,
months ago, probably.
Probably, yeah.
My goodness. And I'm gonna say it now, I love how like all of the Yabakune formations and attacks have names. Like they have,
yeah, they do.
God, they're so funny. Like the first one they do with Maeda is that they all like circle around her, and it's called merry-go-round because they're slowly like going around her. And I would like to mention all of them have either like kendo sticks, or some of them have metal pipes.
Yeah.
But they're also like clanking them onto the floor as like an intimidation tactic, and Maeda's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, she looks like so confused.
Yeah.
It is hilarious.
I also do want to mention that there is a close-up of Maeda's face, and it does look like she's going to cry. Like, there are a little bit of tears in her eyes, and I'm like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah, this fight, it's so much is happening in this fight because we're getting two different sort of scenes, right? We're getting the current situation, and then we're getting sort of parallel flashbacks. And I think that's kind of why she starts crying too. Partly, I'm gonna make an assumption here about Maeda in this fight.
Okay.
Is that she wanted to get beat. And I say this because I'm jumping here a little, but she, throughout the whole fight, she doesn't take her glasses off. When it's just her, right? And that isn't to say like she needed to get serious, you know. She's a good fighter. There's a lot of people, yes, she would still get hurt, but I just have a feeling of like everything that's happened these past 2 episodes, like her depression, you know, and her PTSD have affected her so much. I feel like she allowed herself to get roughed around because it's something that she felt she deserved. Is a theory I'm putting out there.
I can definitely see it though, because you're right. She definitely, I mean, she does, you know, throw a couple of punches that we see throughout between the flashbacks, but it's not a lot. She's mostly getting the shit kicked out of her too. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, she does put some resistance up, but not a lot, not enough in which, she would usually do in other situations. So it reminds me of that fight she had with the Sancho sisters, where she let herself get beat because she thought people would leave her alone. It sort of reminds me of that.
I also wonder if,
sorry, I'm jumping ahead a lot.
It's
here.
Okay. I'm also wondering in that same kind of vein, if it had just ended up being Irena, like, would she have done the same thing? Like, let Irena take out her frustrations on Maeda, because Maeda's has always blamed herself for what's happened, and Irena is blaming Maeda as well. So she's probably like, yeah, just beat the shit out of me. It's fine. It's what I deserve.
And I'll talk a little bit now about the flashbacks that we're getting as she's being surrounded. Because we flashback to a younger Maeda, longer hair, being surrounded by these other girls. I actually like Maeda's sneakers in this. They're like this gold color.
Oh, they are.
Sorry, I had to comment on them and I just saw them again in this video. And I was just like, oh yeah, her ridiculous sneakers.
They match her
she's actually wearing a gold chain.
Yeah, I was gonna
too.
say they match her gold chain
God.
with the too big dog tag on it.
But yeah, so she's surrounded as these other girls from this other school with their ugly ass yellow jackets. So they pounce on her, right? And she starts to fight them off, and one that was about to get a hit on her suddenly gets knocked down, and enters Minami, who yells at Maeda and is like, why are you fighting these little fish, these insignificant freshmen? And they both just start arguing as they're surrounded by other students.
Yeah, just in the middle of the
really
fight.
Funny.
They just have God.
Yeah. Because Maeda instantly is offended. Is like, shut up, like, I didn't ask you.
And Maeda's even like, I thought you gave up fighting. Why are you here? And then Minami doesn't answer. But we get another one of the two people standing back to back while being surrounded by enemies. And
yeah, they start because they remember, oh right, we're in the middle of a fight. Yeah. We shouldn't be arguing right now. Because the other girls immediately start swarming them, and they fight, and we cut back to present day as the boss has basically she threw a can, and everyone waited for the can to drop before they started attacking Maeda. And as they're attacking Maeda's getting these flashes of the past before it's said, as she's getting smacked with metal poles and kendo sticks, which is pretty bad.
Oh yeah,
she's gonna have bruises and probably internal bleeding for days.
And probably a concussion,
most likely, yeah. And that's probably, you know what, the concussion would probably explain why she's having all these flashbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we cut back to the past, and Maeda and Minami are walking home, presumably, and Maeda's like, I thought you weren't fighting anymore, to Minami, and Minami is like, I'm not. This was my last fight. Obviously, Maeda feels responsible. She's like, oh, because of me. And this is where we start getting more parallels, because Minami, pissed off, turns around, is like, stop being so hesitant. Like, I hate it when you're weak-minded. And it's a callback to earlier with Sato and Yuko having that same sort of dialogue. Minami and Maeda continue walking, and Maeda asks about Minami's grandmother. And Minami's like, things are not so great, and like at home, I don't think she's happy, which I'm assuming means I don't think she's happy with me. But we don't really get more of that, because Minami starts climbing this like incline, and she, at the top of the incline, she's like, oh, I'm dreaming or thinking of becoming a nurse. Maeda's like, a nurse? Like, and she's like, yeah, it's gonna be hard, but if I'm serious, I can make it. And so here we kind of get the sort of origins of that blue book, that blue nursing book, and Maeda's dream of becoming a nurse. And Minami's actually telling her, hey, you should give up fighting and take your life more seriously, you know, like, because at the end of the day, like, you know, fighting is okay and all, but eventually you'll become an adult, you know, and you can't be a Yankee forever, right? Is sort of the implication. And this is when we cut back to present day, as Maeda's still getting the shit kicked out of her.
And then we get round 2 of her calling out to Minami for like a minute.
Yes, pretty much. And we're flashing back to the past, and Minami's holding out her blue nursing book and saying like, hey, we should study together. And Maeda actually, she laughs because she's like, you're serious? And Minami is serious. Like, she has a very serious, like, no nonsense kind of face. And she says this super dramatic line, there's nothing but serious in the world.
I have a question.
What?
Does Maeda say this earlier in the season? Because I feel like she does.
She does. Okay. She says it the first episode.
Okay.
She says it the first episode.
I knew it.
When Dharma is getting beat up by Team Hormone, right? And she does say that. And it's a callback to that line. And Maeda is like, oh, okay, so she's being for real, you know? And she's like, all right, well, I won't say no to studying with you. Minami's like, all right, awesome. And they sit down, and Minami takes out the two iconic bracelets and gives the M to Maeda. As she calls it like a symbol of, you know, like a promise, essentially. And I was like, oh, promise ring. God. Okay, I get you.
And then Maeda's like, she's laughing, and she's like, you made this? You? And she just starts cracking up. And Minami's like, what's so funny? And then she's like, because you're suddenly doing something so girly. It's a very cute moment.
It's very adorable. And part of it, I think, that makes this scene work too is that Atsuko and Minami were friends in real life.
Yeah.
And so it just made this scene, I don't know, a lot more heartwarming. And it's just both of their energies just worked well together. And so I think them being friends in real life, it
definitely helped.
It really helped. Yeah. And I want to note, like, this is the first time we see Maeda smile so big and like laugh.
It's so cute too. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to call her Takamina, but this is not this one. Minami actually is like, okay, well, we're gonna start studying tomorrow, all right? And then she lifts up her arm with the bracelet on it, and she's like, don't forget our promise. And Maeda actually puts hers onto her arm, and she gives another like big smile, and she's laughing. And then we mentioned this already, but now and then it cuts to the point where Rena's talking about like, oh yeah, my sister quit fighting to be a nurse. That's the scene that happens next, but we're just gonna skip past it because we already talked about it. And so it cuts back.
We head back to the fight,
and I think I remember their names. Chiharu is the one,
yes,
with the pink leopard sweater, and then oh god, I can never remember the other one's name.
Sanai is, I think, the one.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. But they're both holding Maeda, and they call out to the Yabukune boss, like, oh, she's pretty much done, just end her, you know, that kind of thing. And the rest of the Yabukune girls are actually lined up in 2 separate lines. So, and they're split right to where Maeda's being held. So it's like, I had the word in my head of what they would be. Whatever. They're kind of like guiding the boss right to, you know, right to Maeda. Oh my god. Sorry, I just saw the boss's face. But she does this, after she calls out to Yabukune, she does like this pose, and then she just says, Murofushi? And even Maeda's like, the fuck? And the boss this whole time has had this like assistant just like sitting in the background with her. Now they're actually doing something together. The boss like reaches out behind her and is like, ready, and her assistant like starts spinning her around. And I'm like, what I'm thinking is, oh my god, you're gonna get so fucking dizzy from this. But I get it. I get the whole thing. It's to give the boss more momentum. It kind of reminds me of oh my god, I forgot the name of the sport. But specifically, I see it a lot in the Olympics where it's like there's the big iron ball at the end of a rope, and the
like discus or something like that.
Something like that. I don't know if that's the right name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
But they do spin around to give the actual like ball momentum. So that's what, I don't know, it's just what it made me think of.
It launches the boss into Maeda, and Maeda gets like thrown back into like near like some sort of construction machine. She rolls on the ground, calling out Minami's name again. And actually the scene transitions to Minami in the past, who is getting called to by all these older girls from like the school, from the school that they had beaten the freshmen of earlier. The last day, I guess, or the next day, or sorry, the previous day. God. And they're looking for Maeda, right? And they're saying, hey, can't you just call her up? We want to have a chat with her. Minami's like, oh, she gave up fighting, but I'll apologize for her in her stead. And obviously, like, the older girls are like, you're kidding, right? Like, that's stupid. But if you really want to do it, like, get on your hands and knees. And Minami does. She really does do it. They all laugh at her because they're just like, she really did it. But the leader of this gang grabs Minami by the hair and is like, okay, so where's Maeda? Right? So obviously not keeping her end of the deal because she's a Yankee, like, of course. But she, like, actually slams Minami's head onto the pavement.
Oh,
yeah. It was a very, like, it's actually very, like, oof. That looked like it hurt. Very nice sound effect there for head thumping against the ground. And she gets up, Minami, and she's like, I won't let you touch Maeda. And we just get these scenes, these cuts of Minami getting the shit kicked out of her because she's outnumbered. Like, there's like students on both ends of her, like lots of them.
Yeah, there's probably like somewhere. It looks to me like there's at least 10 of them.
Yeah,
if not
more. Yeah, and we see the usual her falling down the stairs, or rather, she was thrown down the stairs before passing out. And obviously we cut back to the conversation between Dharma and Rena, and then back to Maeda on the floor as she's getting mocked by the boss, because she's like, oh, that's what you're made of, like, you know, like, this is the person everybody was talking about that's so great, you know. And they charge at her, and then we cut again to the past with Maeda somehow being able to sneak in past into the emergency room. Like, somehow she got there.
My thing is, though, like, although I'm not very familiar with the Japanese like healthcare system, but I'm not gonna say my experience because I haven't had this thing happen to me, but when I would think, like, because of last episode where Torigoya, it was like, hey, return to the place that you killed Minami. So if makes me think that she did die at that park.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, why are they trying to resuscitate her in the hospital? Because if they didn't do that on the ambulance ride here,
oh yeah,
she would not be able to come back. If they did it in the ambulance, sure. But I don't think they probably would have thought about that.
No, they did. They clearly did
the
not
show
think
writers.
this through. No.
I think what it was that they were like, okay, we have this scene, but we don't have an ambulance that we could use, but we have a hospital that we already have the set for, so let's just use that.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah, more than likely.
In real life, that's not how it would have worked.
No. Because if she died on scene, yeah, no, it wouldn't have worked this way. But they have this scene, so they're using it. Supposedly she flatlined.
And it's a heartbreaking scene.
It's very heartbreaking. Like, I will say, Maeda Atsuko, the actress, she's so good at crying. Like, she's so fucking good at crying.
Oh. God, she really is. It's very believable. And, like, I mentioned this in my notes because often in TV shows, I would say mostly animation, but even in live action TV shows, they like to show characters do what I call pretty crying, where it's just the tears. There's no, like, mucus coming out of the nostrils, no
Yeah.
spit, nothing. But she's got it, and I'm very
Yeah,
thankful
no.
that they didn't like, hold
It's
on,
just
let me make you
full
pretty,
on.
because I mean she is an idol, but also
Yeah.
it's a Yankee show, so I mean,
Well, there's so much
but
of this show. I mean, we say this is an idol show, and
mhm,
it is, but there's so much of this show
mhm.
that does not paint them in a very idol like way. You know, they get
Oh
beat up,
no,
they get dirty, they get thrown around, like they cry, they're ugly crying, and I think
uh-huh,
they start doing that more in later seasons, which I don't like because I think that's what
mhm,
made the first season particularly so good was because it was very raw, and it showed
oh
all
yeah,
these supposedly very
very,
pretty
mhm.
idols in a different situation, right?
Yeah, and it definitely like shows like even how far their acting goes, because
Mm-hmm.
they are idols, and being an idol is essentially also an acting job because you are
Mm-hmm.
performing to people. But this shows that they can be more than just the idol. You know, they can be these Yankees that are being thrown around, getting the shit kicked out of them, and being very raw and sometimes very ugly. So I do think it's a very good touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but she is ugly crying, and it's very
Oh,
heartbreaking.
super. Oh
Uh,
yeah.
as we cut back to Maeda, who's again being held in place by Yabakuna students for the boss to try to
Mm-hmm.
like kick her again, but this time, uh, suddenly from behind, Sato appears. She's kicked down a bunch of the students and stops the boss's attack midway. And you can see from Nezumi's face, who's just been enjoying the show from behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
is very much like, this wasn't supposed to happen, right? Sato
Mm-hmm.
wasn't supposed to be here. Nobody was supposed to be here. I don't even know how Sato necessarily found Maeda first, given that she was at the hospital the whole time.
She's got Yabakure senses. She knows
that's
where they're at.
that's probably true because that's what happened last time. She just knows when
Mm-hmm.
uh
She's like, it stinks in here. It has to be Yabakure. Hold on. Let me go deal with them.
yeah, everyone is surprised. Even Maida's just like, whoa. And the
Mm-hmm.
Yabakune boss turns to where Nezumi's supposed to be, and Nezumi's gone.
Oh
Totally
yeah, she
dipped.
totally dips.
Peaced out.
She's gone.
Yeah. And Sato, approaches, and she approaches Maeda and is just like, don't go fighting little fish. And this is another callback to what Minami had told her. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
don't go fight little fish, right? You're bigger than them. And actually, the show actually gives a flashback to that here.
Mm-hmm. Just in case you didn't remember, here you go.
Yeah, like 2 seconds ago.
I like how the Yabakune boss, she's trying to act tough, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, just because there's another person here doesn't change anything. Even though they all know Sato.
Yeah, they all
All
know
of
who
them
she
do.
is. Because they all instantly are like, the fear of God is put into them.
Oh, yeah, they're all terrified. Not enough to stop them from fighting, but they're all very hesitant. Like, you could even see, because it does show, like, Chiharu, and she's frightened.
Yeah, she's scared.
I mean, she's cracking her knuckles, but she's definitely scared.
Mm-hmm. And as they're being surrounded, Sato and might actually go back to back. Another callback.
Mm-hmm.
And Sato's like, hey, okay, time to get serious. And this is when Maeda, we get the little sort of heat wave and in front of her eyes as she takes the glasses off and just drops them on the floor. This time with more of a will to fight and a will to live. And
Mm-hmm.
Sato says, hey, watch my back. And Maeda's like, hey, you too. And in this like one moment, those who were enemies are now working together against a common enemy.
I'd like to mention, while they are fighting the Yabakuni students, that there is a blooper of the scene where Mariko actually punches one of them. Like, she just decks the girl in the face. I feel so sorry for whoever that is, because, ow, that has to hurt. But also, it's fucking hilarious.
That's so funny. That's something I could see Mariko doing. Yeah, but like, so they start fighting,
Mm-hmm.
and the fight doesn't last very long with both of them. together.
I mean, Yabukune is their strength, in my opinion, is more of a strength in numbers, not physical strength per person. Where at least with these two in particular is definitely strength per person.
The boss tries to rouse them into another merry-go-round attack, but they all just dip. I like that, like, Chiharu and Sanai actually, like, grab hands and, like, both run away
They
together.
do! It's so cute! I love it. And even, like, the boss's assistant just, like, runs away, too.
She just dips. The boss tries to attack. Maeda just one punch KOs her. The boss even, like, goes down dramatically.
Oh yeah, she
can't do anything
she
normally.
starts doing the chant. God.
Yeah.
She starts using the Yabukune chant, and it's so funny.
It's hilarious. And then Sato does this, like, one-liner, and she's just like, Majiska is always serious. I'm like, shut up, Sato.
God.
And then obviously Dharma arrives late to the party. And she's just, like, asking if Atsune is okay. The way that she comes down the stairs and, like, kind of, like, skirts around Sato makes me laugh. She's just like, but she comes down and asks if Atsune is okay, and Atsuko actually says her name, and she's like, Dharma, like, you know, Minami hated people who were hesitant, and essentially is saying, like, I'm not, reiterating what Dharma had told her. It's like, I'm not alone, like you said. And we get flashes of all of Maeda's friends. Dharma, Team Hormone, Chokoku, Gakuran, and the Kabuki sisters. And we see kind of, now that Maeda's, you know, had that realization of, like, yeah, I'm not alone. You know, like, it sort of took her a while to get back to that place where she was better. But yeah, I just love this kind of tender moment between them, because Maya's actually honestly smiling, you know, honestly accepting Dharma's friendship and companionship.
And it's cute because she even says, like, I'm back. Like, hey, I'm back, and I forgot Dharma is actually, like, asks her, like, Majiska?
Yeah. It's almost like they're having a joke here, and it's
so cute and genuine. I love it.
Yeah, Maeda indulges in the joke, and the moment is cut when they hear Sato with her big old heels, you know, clacking against the stairs as she's going up the stairs, and Dharma's thanking her essentially, like, hey, thank you for saving Maeda. I look at you in a different way now.
Yeah. Sato is just straight up like, don't get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
I was just protecting Majidayo from Yabukune. And Dharma gets that she has a very specific dumbfounded face.
Yeah,
where she's got, like, one eyebrow that goes up and the other one doesn't. And her mouth, like, goes to the side. It's so funny. But she gives Sato that kind of face. And Sato, like, turns to look at Maeda and is like, I'm your next opponent. You beat the 4 Heavenly Queens, so I have to beat you. And she's like, otherwise I have no right to face the boss. And I'd be betraying her while she's fighting an illness. And then at that moment, it actually clicks for Maeda. And we see flashbacks of her and Yuko, especially in the one episode where they were, like, at the arcade and they went to the temple together. And before it, like, cuts away to a different scene, Sato actually is like, it's a battle. Like, the type of battle they mentioned at the beginning of the show, where it's, like, one-on-one. And that she better come. And then she leaves.
Yeah. Wait, can we talk about this, like, for it clicking with Maeda? Because I'm just like, would she have actually, like, realistically, does it make sense for Maeda to know the boss is Yuko? Because, I mean, like, it could be anyone. I don't know.
It really could be anyone.
Like, I don't feel like that's a good enough clue.
Has she... Well, the question is, has she seen that Sato has been at the hospital? Because if she's seen, like, Sato with somebody, then it would be different, but...
She hasn't, because they've always missed each other, like, all the time. So I feel like that it's not a good enough clue for Maeda to pick up, oh, the boss is actually been this girl I knew the whole time. A girl that I never asked the name for, by the way. So
yeah, she really didn't.
yeah, so I just feel like that's a little weak there. I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's like this whole scene is cool because it's like we transition now to Maeda coming into the hospital late at night, still all bloody and beat up, and into this like the rec room that they have at the hospital. Yuko is sitting there, back towards her in a wheelchair, and Maeda in a very dramatic way, it's like, "You're Oshima Yuko," and Yuko does this dramatic thing with her like wheelchair.
She slowly turns with the wheelchair. I mean, I get it.
It's
really
a very
good dramatic moment, but it's also like, Yuko, please.
It's really good, but it's just also really funny. But yeah, so it's now clear to Maeda that she's actually been with the Rapapa boss this whole time, and that's where the episode ends. So, thoughts?
Oh boy. I know I said this with the last couple of episodes. I really feel like after Black's episode 7, the show really just takes off in quality. In my opinion, like episode 8, 9, and this one 10 are all so fucking good. There's a lot that's happening, but every part of it matters. And I said this in the last one where it's like I didn't realize how fast the episode had gone simply because there's so much happening and all of it mattered. This one felt like that to me too, where it was just like this happens and this happens and the next thing you know the episode's over, and I was like, well, crap, I have to watch it again because I don't have notes for half of it.
Yeah, I think this is where Maji shines. I mean, part of it too, it's because we're finally getting the whole picture in what happened with Maeda and Minami, Arena's, or sorry, I always say her name wrong. Arena's, you know, reasoning, right? And then the accumulation of Maeda being able to come back to a better headspace, you know, than she was during the episodes with Gekikara and Torigoya and in this one. And so it's sort of just kind of, so the hero experienced the fall and now they're slowly rising up, you know, towards the resolution, and it's all kind of coming together now. And yeah, it's a very good episode. I like that we get more information, you know, we get more history, we get some really good moments, good character moments between the characters. Yeah, the fight was good. I mean, it served a purpose. I liked it that we were getting sort of these parallels between the past and the present, between characters,
in
relationships.
Between, yeah. Either between, and also in between, like, Maeda and Sato, and Maeda and Minami, but also Sato and Yuko, and Maeda and Minami. I thought that's nice.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, I'd give this whole fight 50 merry-go-round rides, I guess.
Oh god, that's something I didn't think about was a rating. Jesus.
It's okay.
This is what happens when you do your notes really late at night. Don't be like me. If you're going to do anything that requires you taking notes, don't do them at 11:40 at night when you're already supposed to be asleep.
We have a Maji counter, I assume.
We do. They say it so fucking much in this episode.
They really do.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because, like, this episode does show us, like, I know you had mentioned it was, like, the origin of the blue nursing book, and Maeda wanted to be a nurse, but it also was the origin of, like, why the word Maji was such a specific triggering word for her. And so it's literally said throughout this whole episode. There's 11 times it's said. There might be another one. I might have missed one.
Oh my god, that's more than
but
the Gakuran episode.
I'm pretty sure this is our highest count.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, overall I thought this was a really good app. I feel like I've said all I really had to say about it. for the most part during that episode, so I don't have too many thoughts. I mean, the fight was what it was. It was, again, to serve a purpose and to give us more in-depth look of what happened with Maeda and Minami and the origins of things. So again, it was more meant to serve a purpose, but it was fun too because I love this Yabakune. They're very ridiculous.
Oh god, yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites.
I kind of miss it. I don't know if I actually said it, but I definitely wrote it in my notes in one of the past episodes, is that I miss this Yabakune because in later seasons they're so serious.
Yeah, they lose kind of a lot of what made them unique. And I guess we'll talk about it a little bit more once we get more into other seasons that have Yabakune appear more, because this season actually they appear one of the least times, barring I think season 4, and season 3 doesn't count. Yeah, so they're very unique. They're very fun. They're fun villains. I love the boss. The boss is great. And yeah, I don't think I have too much else to say about it.
Well, I guess I have a little bit more to say about Yabakune. Is like, because I had mentioned like their strength is strength in numbers, not necessarily like actual physical strength. It does actually, to me, it feels like it actually gives some type of like a little bit of world building, because it does show us like how other schools, show their strength and that kind of thing, and how they act in fights and that kind of stuff. And I do appreciate that, because in later seasons they kind of end up morphing together a little bit. The only one that kind of stands out, in my opinion, a little bit from Majidayo is Gekioko, right? That's the nursing school.
The nursing school.
I remember the name. They stand out to me.
We'll
but
we'll learn a little more about Gekioko, but they're very interesting.
4.
Yeah. They're very fun. I like them as well. But that's unfortunate that, yes, later on, Yabakune in other schools just sort of kind of have no personality whatsoever. And it sucks. But yeah, so Yabakune here I love them in this season. I think they're great. Wish we got kind of more of that goofiness, because I don't think when we get to season 2, it's sort of different as well. So it's not the same kind of goofiness.
Yeah. But they still, I don't know, to me, I feel like they still feel at least a little bit more unique than they do in later seasons, because they have like their own thing, which we'll talk about when we get there. But they have their own like thing that they do. But they are definitely less. Later. yeah, they're the most unique in my opinion in this season. So just end statement. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it, unless you have something else.
Yeah. No, I think that's it.
Okay, awesome. Where can we find you, Elle?
You can find me at almightyyuna.tumblr.com and at almightyyuna@twitter.com. This seems to be a reoccurring thing. I had some art planned and then didn't do it because
I feel like you should stop announcing it at this point and then surprise us.
Because, yeah, I probably should. Yeah. But Animal Crossing came out and it's absorbed my entire life. I probably will go play it after we're done here.
Oh my god.
So, blame Animal Crossing. What about you? Where can we find you, Raiden?
You can find me at Majidayo at twitter.com or at Suspicious Warrior Honmayan on Tumblr. I'm actually going to put up a sort of ambient song that I did for Maeda that I did a while back, but I didn't post it on the Twitter. So I feel like I'll probably do that and you'll see it later. Given that this episode made me kind of remember that I did that song. It doesn't have any like lyrics to it. It's just like instrumental music. But I'll post it up on the Twitter. And you can find us you can find the Spotify on you can find this podcast, I can't speak, on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called now. We're also are on Anchor, and on Anchor we have different websites you can visit. If you have a preference to listen to this anywhere else, we're all on there.
And if you have any questions and you want to ask us, you could send us an email at Majidayo the podcast at gmail.com. And we will either try to answer your questions in the email or just on the next episode.
Probably on the next episode.
So
I also haven't checked, so if we have.
Well, I'm always logged into it on my computer.
Oh, okay.
I haven't.
Yeah, feel free to send us anything in, any topics you want to discuss, any characters maybe you want us to talk about more that we didn't, any relationships between the characters you'd like us to sort of touch upon. Feel free to send it in. We could probably do like add that content to the bonus episodes that we'll be doing at the end of this podcast for the first season. Yeah, so feel free. Don't be shy. We don't bite. Other than that, though, I hope you guys have a Maji day and stay safe out there. Bye.
Bye.